coming up on NewsCenter this Monday night. Korea and Japan reach a landmark agreement on the issue of wartime sex slavery that has long strained relations. Is this the ultimate apology Korea has been waiting for? President Park Geun-hye and Prime Minister Abe speak on the phone. What the two leaders had to say after striking a deal 24 years in the making. We'll have the details. And with exactly 3 days left of this year, the nation's political parties remain locked in horns over key bills. That as Korea's main political opposition gives itself a brand new name. NewsCenter begins right now. Good evening to our viewers in Korea and hello to those around the world. Welcome to NewsCenter. 24 years it took since the case was publicly disclosed. 3 times that since the actual crime was committed. Korea and Japan have finally concluded talks on settling the long unresolved issue of Japan's sexual enslavement of Korean women before and during World War II. Now, Seoul and Tokyo's foreign ministers headed to the negotiating table this afternoon to overcome some major points of contention. Arirang News Foreign Affairs correspondent Kwon So-ah joins us from Seoul's Foreign Affairs Ministry. So finally an agreement has been reached.
Konyang, it's a historic day for the two countries as the so-called comfort women issue has been one of the most thorniest matters that have divided Seoul and Tokyo, straining bilateral ties for years. After holding talks for a little more than an hour, Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se and his counterpart Fumio Kishida made a formal announcement on their landmark resolution. Major breakthroughs include Japan taking responsibility and formally apologizing to the elderly women survivors, which Minister Fumio Kishida expressed on behalf of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, marking the first official apology made at this level.
The comfort women issue is an issue whereby many women under the then military's involvement bore deep scars to their honor and dignity. And from this perspective, the Japanese government acutely feels responsible.
And the statement Kishida read out included the compensation issue, which was another of Korea's major demands. Seoul and Tokyo decided that Korea will establish a foundation for which the Japanese government will be funding an amount of 1 billion yen. According to a source, this is seen as a creative mechanism that could lead to a satisfiable accord on both sides.
Under the premise that the Japanese government fully implements the bilateral agreement, the Korean government confirms that the issue has been bilaterally settled, definitely and irreversibly.
However, there remains some ambiguity on the statement, as some say it doesn't clearly specify whether the Japanese government is taking legal responsibility. Now, that's why there are concerns that the primary people affected by this issue, which are the former victims of Japan's sexual enslavement during World War II, may not accept the landmark settlement. So we will have to see how things unfold from here. Konyang?
Our Kwon So-ah from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thank you indeed, So-ah. Now, all throughout the year, President Park Geun-hye has been relentless in calling for this matter to be settled within this year. That was before and after her summit talks with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe last month. Now, let's go over to our presidential office correspondent Song Ji-sun. Ji-sun, there were doubts on whether the decades-old issue can actually be concluded within this year. What was the president's first response?
Kanyang, the presidential office called Monday's settlement a final closure on the sensitive, decades-old issue. But President Park Geun-hye stressed that the statement is valid only if Tokyo sincerely fulfills its pledges. Japan's wartime sexual slavery is one of the thorniest issues that has prevented summit talks between the leaders of the two countries for more than 3 years. But the bilateral summit that took place on the sidelines of trilateral talks between Korea, Japan, and China last month paved the way for a faster resolution, with President Park calling for the issue to be settled before this year ends. After sitting down with Japan's Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida at Cheongwade Monday afternoon, President Park also spoke with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on the phone. During their 13-minute conversation, Abe expressed apology and regret to wartime sex slavery victims, adding that Tokyo will sincerely fulfill its tasks to restore their dignity and honor and heal their physical and emotional scars. Abe's verbal apology is a significant step forward from his previous statements, which downplayed the issue on moral or humanitarian grounds. In her message to the nation, President Park asked the public to view the outcome from a broad perspective, as Seoul did its best under the given circumstances, with time ticking for the victims. President Park said this landmark agreement marks a new beginning for Korea and Japan's bilateral relations, and that the two leaders work towards improving relations through building mutual trust. She also pledged that no such tragedy will happen in the future. Kon-young.
Song Ji-sun reporting from the nation's top office. Thank you very much indeed. Now, no one has been hoping more for a fair deal than the Korean women victimized by Japan's wartime atrocities, but their reaction to today's bilateral talks could be described as lukewarm at best. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
The response from surviving victims of Japan's wartime sex slavery is that of disappointment. The chairman of the House of Sharing in Gwangju, Gyeonggi-do Province, a shelter for the so-called comfort women, says the deal seems to be a rough and ready agreement that failed to clearly point out Japan's legal responsibility in the matter.
Every time Japan's leadership changes, Tokyo's stance on the issue also shifts, as in the case of the Kono Statement in 1993, which acknowledged Japan's sexual enslavement of women during World War II.
Current Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe had previously wanted to revise a statement made by then Chief Cabinet Secretary Yohei Kono, which was based on the count of 16 Korean women who were victims of Japan's wartime atrocities. The House of Sharing also said that Japan's offer to provide reparations as part of an aid project, but not as direct compensation, is redundant, since there's already a fund set up by the Korean government to help assist the victims. The organization plans to discuss the results of the deal with other local comfort women groups to coordinate a response by Tuesday. It also plans to nullify the deal and demand the Korean government to come up with a better settlement that will clearly address Japan's legal responsibility on the sexual enslavement issue. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Well, some in Korea point to the fact that the statement from Japan lacks recognition of key factors, such as the Imperial Japan's coerced enslavement of women and girls and a legal responsibility over the issue. Now, is today's apology the kind that Korea and especially the victims of wartime sex slavery have been waiting for decades? How do experts think about today's landmark agreement? Well, I asked Yang Gi-ho, professor of Japanese studies at Seongonghae University earlier today. Listen to what he had to say.
I guess this can be evaluated in terms of the Japanese government's official acknowledgement of taking responsibility for its wartime sex slavery. Also, it looks like the Japanese government has made its best effort to show sincerity, which was never displayed in the past, by fully paying a compensation of 1 billion yen. However, there are no clear answers in other issues, such as taking their legal responsibility or admitting forced mobilization of sex slaves. So we should observe how this will be accepted by the victims and civic groups.
What about the Japanese government's offer to provide 1 billion yen, that's roughly $8.3 million to a fund that would compensate the victims? I also wanted to find out how this was different from the Asian Women's Fund that we saw back in 1994.
Previously, the Asian Women's Fund, which is a Japanese foundation, has provided civil funds worth about 20 million won to the victims. Though this can be seen as a joint project, the money for the compensation will be fully offered by the Japanese government, while the Korean government will be in charge of how the money will be administered. Therefore, this can be viewed as Japan's move to secure a final agreement on comfort women issue. Regarding how this agreement will influence Korea-Japan relations, The comfort women issue has been so far the biggest obstacle. Thus, today's agreement can be seen as a big improvement in bilateral ties. However, with opposing views from various civil organizations as well as the victims themselves regarding the agreement, in addition to how domestic media is reviewing the agreement, I think we need to work on convincing the general opinion in our country first. Once that is achieved, relations between Korea and Japan will take a future-oriented turn by next year, opening the possibilities of huge developments in bilateral ties.
That was Yang Gi-ho, professor of Japanese studies at Seoul-based Seonggonghoe University. In the nation's parliament today, again, no progress on those contentious bills. Amid continued rival party wrangling and only a few days remaining before the year's end, the nation's lawmakers did manage to pass some 50 less contentious bills on this last Monday of the year. Shi Myung-gil is at the National Assembly. Now, Myung-gil, what do we have on hand after today's marathon talks?
Kon-young, a number of key bills remain unresolved at the National Assembly, while marathon talks continue between rival parties. The ruling Saenuri Party welcomed the passage of bills on Monday, but urged the formerly named Main Opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy Party to do more.
Although some progress was made at Monday's plenary session, the more contentious bills remain pending. The opposition bloc must acknowledge that Korea's future depends on both parties.
The MPAD changed its party's name to Deobura Democratic Party on Monday. Deobura means going together or going with, a move that could indicate an intent to forge a new party identity. At Monday's meeting, its leader Moon Jae-in was focused on unity ahead of April's general election.
We must end the struggle within our party and unite to prevent unnecessary defections. I hope the efforts we're making now will solve our party's internal strife.
Amid Moon's repeated calls for party solidarity, two lawmakers left the party on Monday. Choi Jae-chun and Kwon Eun-hee are just the latest in a series of defections, following the high-profile departure of former party co-chair An Chol-soo earlier this month. A slew of economic bills pushed by the government remain in limbo at the National Assembly. These include bills on the labor market, the service sector, and a tax credit for companies that undergo restructuring. As the presidential office continues to pressure the lawmaking body to pass key economic bills, Assembly Speaker Chung Eui-hwa may decide to use his authority to table the bills before the year's end. Kon-young?
Well, they really don't have much time, do they? There are only 3 days left of this year. That was a parliamentary correspondent, Shi Myung-gil. Now, Korea has signed a multi-billion-dollar contract on its homegrown fighter jet project. Codenamed KFX, it's Korea's largest weapons development project that aims to produce scores of fighter jets within the next 15 years. But there are stumbling blocks along the way. Our Connie Kim joins us from Seoul's Defense Ministry. Connie, half a year we waited for this signing to happen. What does this contract mean?
Kon-young, with Korea's Defense Acquisition Program Administration and the country's only aircraft maker, Korea Aerospace Industries, signing a contract on Monday afternoon, Seoul will push ahead to develop its first indigenous fighter jets. Now, under the pact, the country hopes to produce 120 homegrown mid-tier fighter jets by 2032 to replace its aging fleet of F-4s and F-5s. The contract signing of the nation's largest weapons development project was delayed 6 months than originally planned.
Negotiations with Indonesia delayed the signing, and there were changes in domestic developments which needed to be reflected.
20% of the $15 billion fighter jet program will be invested by Indonesia, based on a deal signed with Korea Aerospace Industries. Participating in design process and component production, Jakarta will in turn receive one prototype plane and technological data from Korea. With the signing of the contract taking place later than planned, production of 6 test planes is expected to be completed by 2026. In January, a task force team of 70 to 80 officials and experts will be launched. However, development of Korea's first indigenous fighter jet will have to overcome several hurdles yet. It needs to develop 4 core technologies, including the active electronically scanned radar, as the U.S. barred Lockheed Martin from transferring those technologies to Seoul in April. Although the U.S. government approved the transfer of the remaining 21 technologies this month, concerns remain as Korea may not receive a number of specific sub-technologies needed for the project. And other lingering concerns are that the government budget for the KFX project has been cut to about $57 million next year, and that the fighter jet development timeline has been pushed back, making it hard to recoup investment. Konya?
Right, KFX making headlines all throughout this year. Connie Kim reporting from the Ministry of National Defense. Thank you, Connie. Hanwha Galleria, the retail arm of Korean conglomerate Hanwha Group, has partially opened its duty-free store in Seoul. Now this on the heels of a series of similar launches of other duty-free shops in the nation's capital. As the number of tax-free stores increases, also growing is the fierce competition between those in the game. Prime real estate, luxury brands, and of course shoppers, just to name a few. But will the latest openings churn out money the way these companies hope they will? Our Kim Min-ji has the details.
Hanwha Galleria is the latest to join the urban duty-free store lineup, taking up the first 4 floors of the 63-city building, one of Seoul's best-known landmarks nestled in the financial district of Yeouido. It showcases some 370 brands, including a wide array of cosmetics, as well as a floor dedicated to specialties and goods made by local small and medium-sized companies.
Our duty-free store is the closest to the airport, making it easy for tourists to get to. We plan to come up with special tour packages that incorporate other attractions in the area, such as cruises on the Hangang River.
Hanwha also plans to revamp the aquarium and restaurants within the building. With the latest addition to the skyscraper, Hanwha hopes to provide a convenient one-stop shopping, entertainment and culinary experience, transforming the area into a new tourist hub. The company hopes to post sales of over $430 million next year and $2.6 billion through 2020. Following the partial opening of HDC Shilla Duty Free last week, these new stores are changing the duty-free landscape, which was once centered in the heart of the capital. While it gives more options for shoppers, for the companies, their success will depend on how much of a differentiated experience they can offer and how many luxury brands they can host. But under government pressure to open early to revitalize the economy, the latest 2 duty-free stores opened without big brands. Although they plan to secure luxury brands before the grand opening next year, it can take up to a year to carry out negotiations and launch stores. And with a new law requiring companies to renew their duty-free licenses every 5 years, luxury brands could be reluctant to sign anytime soon. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Korea's household and corporate debt-to-GDP ratio hit a record high in the 3rd quarter, fueling concerns that a snowballing debt poses a serious risk to the economy. Once again, a report on Korea's skyrocketing debt. Hwang Ji-hye has this report.
The Bank of Korea says the amount of household and corporate debt in Korea was almost 2 times higher than the country's GDP in the 3rd quarter this year. The debt-to-GDP ratio stood at 182.6%, marking a new high. The figure edged down in the 1st quarter but breached the 180% mark for the first time in the following 3 months. Household and corporate debt includes loans and sales on credit. The record amount in the July to September period came on the back of surging household debt caused by eased real estate regulations and a record low key interest rate. Riding on the government's measures to boost home transactions, the central bank cut the key rate 4 times in less than a year period starting August last year. Given that, analysts warn the debt burden is becoming a potential risk for the economy.
If house prices drop suddenly, the debt problem will emerge as a serious issue that could worsen Korea's financial health and trigger a full-blown crisis.
3rd quarter household debt grew at its fastest pace since 2002 when the data were first compiled. The amount of debt stood at over $1 trillion as of the end of September, up roughly $30 billion from the end of previous quarter. Experts add the snowballing household debt could also dent consumption in the longer term as people will save money to pay back their loans. 황지혜, Arirang News.
2 German researchers have delved into the code of North Korea's computer operating system called Red Star and found that it mirrors the paranoid nature of that regime. The OS was found to be highly resistant to tampering and allowed little privacy for users. Red Star 3.0, Kwon Jang-ho reports.
This is the boot screen for Red Star 3.0 or 붉은별. It's the official operating system developed by the North Korean regime, which was leaked on the internet in December 2014. It runs a rudimentary set of applications that includes a Korean word processor, a calculator, and an app for composing music. But 2 German researchers found that there's more than meets the eye. They presented their findings at the Chaos Communications Congress in Hamburg on Sunday, revealing that the system was based on an open-source version of Linux, but much of it built from the ground up, seemingly to avoid the system from being compromised by outside parties. It also comes with its own firewall, antivirus software, and encryption systems to protect the integrity of its code. If they are tampered with, the computer displays an error message or just reboots itself. They also found that Red Star tags all media files with a secret watermark code, even on a USB drive, therefore keeping a log of every computer with which it has been shared. This is thought to be in order for the regime to trace users who are sharing illegal content, such as foreign films, music, and other forms of media. But experts say that the system is not particularly sophisticated.
The OS has been put together quite well, but it's something that can be made by anyone. Because it is based on an open-source system, it can be built to adapt to any country or serve any specific function.
Previous versions of the OS had resembled the appearance of a Windows operating system, but this latest Red Star appears more similar to the Mac OS. No one knows why the developers changed the design, but Kim Jong-un has been spotted with a Mac on his desk previously. Perhaps that had an influence. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
How much do you know about drones? From package delivery and aerial filming to search and rescue operations, drones are increasingly becoming part of our lives. Some want to make profit, some want it to be flying eyes in the sky, some just want to have fun. A fast-growing extreme sport where pilots compete head-to-toe with small flying drones while wearing first-person view goggles. It's drone racing, our news feature tonight.
High up in the sky, inching closer to the finish line every second, are drones. When a drone safely passes through obstacles, barely avoiding what could have been an inevitable crash, spectators simply can't help but to contemplate in awe. The vivid thrill of flying these machines has inspired a new trend that's gaining widespread popularity by the day: drone racing.
It was very lively. I found it amazing how quickly the racers can fly their drones on such a short track.
I think drone racing is spiritually healing because I can feel like a bird flying freely in the skies.
Drones in 2015 have already become a global hit. It's basically an unmanned aircraft with a remote control. Prototype drones were first developed for military purposes in the early 2000s, but recently drones have taken civilian industries by storm. They can be equipped with many attachable devices, including cameras, sensors, and even communication systems. America's biggest online retailer, Amazon, unveiled its 30-minute drone delivery plans, which have been in preparation from as early as 2013. Drones are also useful in emergency situations. The global drone market is predicted to grow to over $11.4 billion by 2022, more than a twofold jump from 2010.
The commercialization of drones represents an industrial revolution in the skies. The growth so explosive that in 10 years, it'll be an $86 billion business with 200,000 jobs created.
Research in drones has been speeding up in Korea as well, currently 7th in the world for drone technology. As of now, drones are only used to spray pesticides or film movies with aerial cameras. But this year, a new domestic technology of a drone mounted with a portable telecommunications station was developed. The new gadget will allow drones to be put into search and rescue work in disaster zones, and test runs are scheduled to begin next year. The domestic market for drones as a hobby is also catching on. In fact, a new sport of drone racing has become the hottest trend these days. KT's Giga Drone Racing, Korea's biggest competition of its sort, was held last Sunday at a shopping complex in Seoul, with 24 top players competing.
Since last year, drone racing has experienced a boom around the world. There are even countries, including Australia and Israel, that have done drone racing leagues.
Cameras set on the drones film what's in front of the aircraft and show it live on the racer's smart goggles. Players can experience what flying in virtual reality is, and that's why they call the sport first-person view racing. The drone industry is still at its early stages. In that sense, the racing competition provides an opportunity for non-users to become more familiar about the world of drones, which in turn will continue to expand as a fast-growing market.
I was surprised at how fast they were, just like in the movies. I'd like to learn to fly them myself.
Drones are being utilized in new ways, like in the portable telecom station called LTE Drone Service and a communication network for safety on oceans. It's a field that can leverage the synergy between the speed of a racing drone and the high-quality communication service offered by the LTE Drone Service. KT will continue to host bigger drone racing competitions.
With drone racing emerging as a new sport, the sky is the only limit for the realm of drones in Korea.
Iraqi forces have declared a major victory in the fight against Islamic State. The government troops say they've fully liberated the western city of Ramadi. Bruce Harrison joins me live in the studio. Bruce, tell us about this long-fought battle.
Hello, Konyang. The assault to retake Ramadi started several weeks ago when government troops moved outside the city, set up camp, and sized up their adversaries there. They began the final push to recapture the central government complex in the city on Sunday, and today, after those several weeks in hard fighting, they were finally able to raise the Iraqi flag above the government center.
Now, Bruce, this was the Iraqi forces' first major victory against Islamic State. Now, what does this say about about ISIS's grasp over its territory?
Good question. Well, first, this is a really important victory for Iraq because when the Islamic State took Ramadi in May, government forces quickly retreated. So this should be a major morale booster as the U.S.-trained troops prepare to retake the northern city of Mosul. Now, Mosul is the most populated city held by ISIS in Iraq or Syria. Taking it back would effectively end the extremist group's holding structure in Iraq and rob the militants of crucial funding. The victory in Ramadi comes amid increased bombing raids by allied forces in ISIS-held territory, though on Saturday, Islamic State leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi said in an online statement, that ISIS will remain defiant in the face of such airstrikes. An unidentified man echoed that sentiment in a video reportedly released the same time by Islamic State.
I swear to God that whenever a raid happens, our belief will further strengthen. If not only Bashar al-Assad, but the whole world attack us, God will be with us.
The airstrikes appear to be working, though, and Iraqi military officials said the militants were attempting to halt government forces' advance in Ramadi before airstrikes slowed IS forces. The Chinese government is finally turning back a policy aimed at keeping its population from spiraling out of control. From January 1st, couples in China will be allowed to have 2 children for the first time in decades. Xinhua News reports Chinese lawmakers passed the new legislation Sunday during a session of the National People's Congress Standing Committee. The government's currently facing a potential crisis because of its aging population. The law's reversal may also help prevent future tragedies. Fan Lifang and Shang Qing's only son was killed by a drunk driver.
For a family, losing one's son is, how do you say it, falling from hell from the heavens. It's as if the skies collapsed. I couldn't breathe.
The retired couple once believed they were honoring the country under the policy, but no longer. Beijing began to ease the policy this October, so as many as 90 million families could qualify to have a second child.
Now, Bruce, Star Wars, it has become the fastest movie to earn $1 billion in global box office sales. If I remember correctly, Force Awakens just came out 12 days ago.
Just 12 days ago. And Pyongyang, what's even more incredible, it has the potential to make a lot more money. The film could get a major bump when it premieres in China on Tuesday. The cast and crew were in Beijing, where they spoke on Sunday ahead of the film's debut.
It's almost so overwhelming, it's difficult to really process just what the response has been to the movie so far. And it hasn't even opened here yet, which certainly we're hoping and anticipating that it will play very, very well here.
The previous record for global sales was held by Jurassic World, which took 13 days to reach the milestone.
Well, Bruce, if Star Wars really gets to grab the attention of the huge Chinese market, the film has potential to become the largest grossing film ever.
Sure, the Chinese market and beyond. I mean, right now it's already ranked number 5. It's only been out 5 in all time of any film, and it's only been out for about 12 days, as you said. So there's a lot of potential to see where this movie can go.
Have you seen it?
No.
I have, and I won't ruin it for you, but you should definitely go check it out.
Okay, all right, I'll put it on my list.
All right, thanks, Bruce, for that.
Hey, thanks, my pleasure.
The very final week of 2015 kicked on a freezing note. The first cold wave advisory of the season still very much in place for some parts of this country. Let's get the latest weather update with our Jihan at the Weather Center. Jihan, it's no pleasant weather, cold and dry.
It is very cold outside. A severe cold wave swept the entire nation since yesterday. And as Kon-young just said, the first cold wave advisory of the season was issued in parts of Gangwon-do and Gyeonggi-do provinces yesterday, and they're still in place. And also a dry weather advisory was also issued for most of the western regions. So be sure to stay warm, drink plenty of water to prevent catching a cold. Now tomorrow morning will be as cold as today, but thankfully the cold weather will ease up by tomorrow afternoon with highs rebounding to the seasonal averages. But here in the capital tomorrow morning we'll wake up to a low of -7, and other regions will also have negative readings. So let's take a closer look. Daegu will kick off at -4, -1 for Busan, but Jeju should be on the positive side, kicking off at 4. And daily highs will be slightly above the norm, as the high here in Seoul will get up to 3, 6 for Daegu, and Busan and Jeju will see a high of 8 tomorrow afternoon. Now the last week of the year seems to be promising, with snow in the forecast on Wednesday afternoon, which could linger till Thursday morning. Then partly sunny skies are in store for the rest of the day. And Friday will wake up to mostly sunny skies, so you could easily check out the first sunrise of the year from anywhere. And readings will also be on the positive side. Well, that's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
Way back in preschool, I remember learning that an apology has 3 parts. 1, I'm sorry. 2, it's my fault. And 3, asking, what can I do to make it right? Most of us miss the 3rd part. I'll leave you on that note on this last Monday of 2015. I'm Moon Gon-young. Thanks everyone for watching. We hope to see you right back here, same time tomorrow on NewsCenter.